Was it easy for some of the students?
Right.
Some closer parts?
Most students we had from the beginning.
And then her granddaughter. Yeah. She's a great little girl. This year should just be like her niece.
Just hit the redo.
Yeah. Everything else in 2019 or 2021? I know.
Not yet.
I tried it several times. I looked at 28 point whatever.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome. This seems a little bit odd in this large room. I can't see everybody, and so can't see everybody's name tags, but I want to welcome you. I'm Mayor Dave Drossman, and I'm going to call the Budget Committee meeting to order. It's a little bit unique in the fact that we're doing it live on a video, so that it is being video recorded. There's also an opportunity for people to call in through our association with Amazon Web Services and their Chime platform. People can call in remotely as well and participate. So those people that are on video, it is a 30-second delay, so we will have like 30 seconds. We have to wait for people to respond or comment. There will be a couple comment periods on your agenda, number 5. And by the way, you are also chair people of the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency, and there will be a comment period on there as well at number 5 on that one. So those people that are on the phone and they would like to comment, we will have the opportunity during those times on our agenda to comment. You will have to indicate that you want to make a comment by pressing *7 on the phone. We also have one member that was not able to make it in personal attendance here, but is on the phone, and he's a part of the Budget Committee, Jonathan Edwards. He will be on the phone and able to comment and speak at any time. Those others are on mute until the comment sections. So with that, we have to first open the meeting and elect a committee chair. But what I'd like to do first is just kind of go around the room and introduce yourselves, and whether you're a committee member or a counselor or what your role is in this, because we can't see everybody's name tags, and so we can't see what their name is and what the position is. So if you could go around the room and introduce yourselves. I'm Mayor Dave Drossman.
Byron Smith, City Manager.
Jackie Linton, Committee Member.
Roy Brown, Hermiston City Councilor.
Jessica Noreen, committee member.
Doug Primer, City Councilor.
Anton Juanes, Budget Committee. Manuel Gutierrez, City Councilor.
Josh Roberts, Budget Committee.
Barb McMahon, Financial Analyst. Lily Alarcon-Strong, City Recorder.
David McCarthy, Potential Councilor.
Doug Smith.
Doug Smith, City Council.
Joanna Heaton, Budget Committee.
Lori Davis, City Councilor.
John Douglas, Budget Committee.
Jackie Myers, counselor.
Brian Meissner, Committee Member.
Mark Krosick, Finance Director.
Jason McCann,
Cameraman.
Budget.
Rod Harden, City Councilor.
Good, welcome everybody. Thank you for your participation. For those of you that are volunteering, thank you for your volunteerism. This is a pretty major accomplishment every year that we go through and approve a budget for the city and the operations of the city for the next year, and make sure that the council balances that budget. So it's an important role that you play, and I appreciate your willingness to participate in that process. Anything else you want to understand? Okay. So we're going to start out first by electing committee chair. So I would entertain a nomination for committee chair.
I'd like to nominate Josh Roberts for Committee Chair.
Second.
So it was seconded by Mayor White.
Yeah.
It's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Gutierrez, that we nominate Josh Roberts. Any other nominations? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Roberts, it's yours.
All right. So, looks like we need to elect a secretary, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, so do we have a nomination for secretary?
The role of the secretary is just a name, pretty much. Nobody does all the meetings. And you have to sign the budget with the chairperson, so there's not a lot of responsibility.
I will nominate Jessica Merritt.
I second that. All right, been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Next is the budget message, so turn that over to the budget officer.
All right, is this working? No.
Usually on the top.
Okay, the battery's running down on that, and it's not turning back on, so I'll try to talk loud until Al gets in here with another one. I'd like to echo the mayor's feelings today. I want to start off by saying thank you very much for participating and helping with the budget committee. It is the most important policy statement the city makes as far as what do we spend money on, how do we value different things. So also want to say thank you to Mark Krozik and Barb McMahon who put together the budget document and made sure all the numbers work together. And then the department heads have done a really great job of working together, putting together thoughtful budgets that recognize the circumstances we're in and try to accomplish the most that we can. And then thank you for being here to review this even in these very different times. So this is, I don't think we'll have a budget committee like this again, hopefully. So glad to have everybody here. And what I want to start off with, before we get into the new document, is just to talk a little bit about what we did with money last year. Did a lot of great things in 2019-20. From an operational standpoint, the police department had 1,100 arrests, 6,500 citations, 11,000 calls for service, 11,500 officer-initiated activities. We've got Parks Department with impacting approximately 120,000 participants. Now all of these include a little bit of a projection to get us to the end of the fiscal year, and that number will go down if we don't get to open the pool this year, but we're still going to be hopeful that we might get to do that. The library circulated over 60,000 items. In our two utility departments, water and sewer, and then HES, about 5,200 accounts that we service every year. Transit, this is one that we've been happy to see the numbers go up a little bit. Last year, on the bus portion of transit, we did 6,000 rides, and this year we think we're going to hit about 8,000. And we're glad to see that service is being utilized. We also provide about 20,000 taxi rides for senior and disabled folks. And we're also actually starting a new program that we're trying to help people get to their jobs and home, and so we hope to see this number continue to grow a little bit as we go into the future. About 3,400 building inspections, and then the planning department about 292 final lots. These are lots that have infrastructure in front of them. They've been approved as final. So we did that during this last year. Happy to see that. From a capital side, here's some pictures of West Hermiston Avenue, some of it under construction. That was a location that had some of our oldest infrastructure under the ground, so we did a lot of the replacement of water lines, valves, things like that, so that we could take care of it and not have to cut that nice new street the year after it got installed. So we did a lot of that this year, and it really looks nice. The Northeast Water Tower, here's a picture of it in process and then also finished. We also, as part of that project, we we tagged it on to the end of it because the contractor was able to give us a much better price, but paved East Theater Lane, and so we're really pleased to see that. They were just going through the punch list items today, and that should be all the way finished. Now, we've continued to see active development. This is a picture of two different subdivisions. The one in the upper right-hand corner is at the corner of West Theater and Gear. And so, thanks, Al. So West Theater and Gear, and that's going to be called, I think they're getting real creative, I think they're going to call it the Theater Park Subdivision. And then the other one is right off of East Theater Lane, where we've been doing a lot of work, and that subdivision is called Cimarron Terrace, and we were just notified that the developer who put in the infrastructure has sold about 20 lots to another developer who's going to build the houses. And they're interested in coming down next 1st of June and start talking about building permits and so forth. So you should see some houses going up right there in that area. And again, these, our goal with the Northeast Water Tower was not just to incentivize development in the northeast quadrant, which is where it will have the most impact, we think, but it also served a purpose to kind of help bring prices down on land, so because now there was a lot more acreage, so the supply and demand, there's a lot more available acreage that had access to utilities. And so we think that we've seen a number of developments move forward because they were able to buy land at a price that worked for the development so that they could move forward. Now we had quite a few challenges during 2019-20. We had a second annual flood at Riverfront Park, second annual 100-year flood. And so we were hoping it wasn't going to be a third just the past few days watching all the rain that came in the mountains. But so far so good. Then right before this fiscal year started, the Funland Park burned down, and so we've been working to try to get that rebuilt. We had a fire at City Hall, and then the last few months we've been dealing with COVID-19 and how we change operations and try to help and support all the community as we go through this challenge. So that's a recap of what we've kind of done the past year, and now I want to do a brief introduction to the document itself as we go through it. You've got named tabs here for some of the different funds and different parts of the budget. And we'll be using page numbers, which are in the bottom right-hand corner. And so I'll be able to help you guide you to the pages that we're talking about. And then just a quick few comments about a city budget versus your home budget. Typically, in a home budget, all the money goes into one account and you spend your money out of that and you make sure that you don't overspend. But with the city budget, we have multiple funds, and each fund has different sources of money, and with that, different restrictions on what you can spend it on. One of the easiest examples is the utility fund. A lot of times we get accused of taking that water and sewer revenue and spending it on all kinds of other things. But all of the money that comes from the water and sewer utilities stays in that fund, and we use that to pay for those operations. And so it's run what we call as an enterprise fund, where it keeps all of its money. Then we have a reserve fund, and this is something that the state requires us to do. If we're going to keep money, if we want to save for the future, like a little later we'll talk about, we've been doing a pay-as-you-go on some of our street projects. So we have to set up a separate fund where we take money out of our street fund, put it in this reserve fund, and we accumulate it there, and then we pay for projects out of that fund. And then the state of Oregon has some pretty strict budget regulations, and we work within those. We appreciate the governor gave us some leeway as far as holding some of these meetings and some other things that you know, we were able to work through it. I know other cities were struggling a little bit more to try to meet some of these requirements. So what you're looking at tonight is what we call a proposed budget. And it's proposed by the budget officer, which is the city manager here in Hermiston. And as we present, we can make modifications, we can make changes to that, and we'll be asking you to approve a budget by the end of tonight, or if we need to have more time, we have another meeting scheduled if we need it. And then it comes to the city council for adoption. So we use those three terms, and they're very specific, but this is the proposed, we'll have an approved, and then we have an adopted budget. And our deadline is to have that adopted before the end of June. All right, so some of our outside impacts on our budget. We continue to have a steady and slow growth pattern. We added another 215 to our population estimate this year. That was what we added last year. I was surprised when I was going back through this. It was the exact number, 215. But now we're 18,415. The census is going on right now. We anticipate that it's gonna be a bigger jump than the 2% that we've seen. That's the pattern. The census doesn't quite count, or the estimates don't quite stay up with the actual growth that's going on. So we'll see that hopefully by the end of the year. Might be a little late getting here because of COVID-19. So our assessed value has done the same thing. You can see just a slow, steady growth over the past 9 or so years. And this year we went over $1 billion in assessed value. That's a big milestone for the city. But overall, we have a strong economy here. Now, we've had some setbacks with COVID-19 and job losses and so forth. We feel like those are relatively temporary. We're hoping that we can move back into the strong and steady growth that we've seen. In our area, the data centers are continuing to build new buildings. They're almost, Amazon Web Services is almost built out at their 2 Umatilla locations, and they've started putting more emphasis now, putting more buildings at the Westland Road location, and then are in the process of acquiring some property here on Feetville Road. Now, and we've also been annexing additional acreage. We annexed enough land for about 100 additional lots, just a few, I don't know, now it seems like a lot longer ago, maybe a couple months it was actually that we did that annexation. And so we're just continuing to see steady single-family housing growth. We saw about 100 new units come on the market last year. And we expect to see maybe a little more than that this year with some of the projects that are moving along. All right, now the all funds budget. So like I said, we have lots of different funds. So this is all of the different areas of the city. We increased that at about $700,000. A lot of that increase has to do with the enterprise zone payments that we will start getting next month from Lamb Weston, and then we'll see another payment next year. And so with those, we see this increase. Now, from a personnel standpoint, if you want to look to Roman numeral 25 in the budget book. Kind of hits right in the middle of our employee distribution. And if you look on there at the bottom on 26, we're proposing to go up 2 positions in the last budget to this one. And and you can see the distribution through the different departments. And that's where I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this because it will affect some of the numbers that we look at tonight. So if you take a look at right there, the water production and maintenance is at the top of 26. Last year it showed we had 9.93 positions. I'm not sure how you get 9.3 of a person, but that's how we did it. And now we have 6 3/4 in that department. Now we didn't lay anybody off, we didn't cut any positions, but we've taken a different approach, and I hope to explain that with this chart here. So the top part of this chart shows a listing of a number of employees who their salaries used to be spread across multiple departments. They're all general fund employees that do general fund services for the most part. But they do provide services to those other funds. And so for example, Mr. Krozik here, 10% was in the general fund, 6% was in HES, the electric utility, and 42 and 42 were split between sewer, recycled water, and water. Now, none of us that are in the city now could figure out exactly how they figured out how to split those up. But you can see lots of them. None of the cost for the city manager was in the general fund. It was all spread in some of the other departments. So what we did is we had a study done of not only the employee separation, but the overhead that goes with those employees. So the portion of City Hall, the portion of the utilities at City Hall, those types of things, how are they allocated? And we used some different measures to try to balance that out. How many employees does that department have? How many items do they have on the city council agenda? Things like that to try to see their impact on the general fund. And so with that, we came up with a methodology to allocate that overhead to these different departments. And the bottom there is the result. So on the left, past method, about $920,000 used to be allocated based on those percentages above. Now, under the new method, there's $928,000, so it went up slightly, but they were, even though we couldn't figure out why, or what the estimate was, or those percentages were, they were pretty accurate. But you'll see the split among the departments has changed a little bit. So the water department, their allocation to the general fund went down substantially. The HES went down a little bit, and the streets fund, which hadn't been allocating as much overhead, went up substantially. So we'll see this as we go and look at some of the departments. You'll see the impact, and it makes it look like the general fund took a big jump, and but really there wasn't that big of a jump. So some assumptions. We're trying to base it on our city vision statement, the values and goals adopted by the council. The numbers you see include a 2.75% increase to city employees. At the end of this, I'm going to talk about a recommendation that I have for you to consider. And then it includes the retirement PERS and health insurance increases. Both of those for this year were in the range of 5%, which from a health insurance standpoint, that was nice. And PERS, what that means is that's just basically the increase based on any increases in salaries, things like that, because the rates are 2 years, they last 2 years for PERS. So we'll see another big jump potentially next year. Hope not, but yeah.
So back to the FTE, you said you increased 2, and it's hard to figure out where those 2 were increased. Could you explain where the 2 additional people were added?
Right, so it is a little weird because where they were added in the police department. But if you look at the police one, it looks like they only went up 1 because they went from 31 to 32. But we added a records person and a new school resource officer, but we subtracted a code enforcement officer and moved that to the planning, the manager and planning department. So it looks like it only went up one, but they went two new employees, and I'll talk about those a little bit when we get to the police department. Any other questions? All right. So there's a typo that I missed right there. The mayor said I spelled message wrong earlier. I didn't, but I did put decrease instead of increase. So our general fund budget went up $2 million, and nearly all of that is based on this change in allocation of how we're showing the expenses. The revenues to the general fund obviously went up at the same amount because those utility departments are paying the general fund for the services, billing, so forth, HR, all those types of things. All right, from the police department, their budget is on page 46. And we've been tracking closely dispatch costs, and 3.1% increase on the dispatch costs. We feel that's a pretty good solid increase. It's not, we've had some bigger ones that gave us concern in the past, but this is something that we can manage around and is understandable. We continue to work with the sheriff's office on so we can continue to have discussions with them about when they have greater needs, and so we can be ready if we need to add additional dispatchers, that we can be ready to talk about that. They also received an increase in the 911 tax that was increased by the state legislature, and so I know that helped in their budgeting as well. So we have in the budget an additional records clerk. From 18 to 19, just calendar year, our records request went up 39%. And part of that is also the time it takes to process some of those. We've been using the body cameras now for a number of years, and that is getting more and more common to be requested by insurance companies, other places, and we have to review every one of those cameras or body cam segments before we release it to make sure there's no violations of HIPAA or other privacy things that need to be done. And so not only are we getting a lot more requests, but they take a lot more time rather than just emailing a PDF of the report from an incident. There's a lot more work involved in that, and so we were proposing to add that records clerk. And then we're proposing to add an additional school resource officer. Now, we are fortunate to have a great partnership with the Hermiston School District, where they provide 75% of the cost, full cost of a school resource officer. We pay 25%. And that means we utilize them during the summer when school's out. They get on shifts and help fill in and do different things for us. Their thinking is, in the past, we've had a school resource officer assigned to the elementary schools, and then one that covered both the high school and the two middle schools. And what they want to go to is have one assigned to the middle schools, the high school, and then one at the elementary. So trying to get better coverage. Mostly they felt the need was at the middle school level. They needed to have a little more attention there with those students, and seemed like a lot of the time was spent from that officer at the high school. So, any other questions on the police department?
Byron, so have we talked to the school since this budget was put together to determine how COVID is going to affect them and whether or not it's going to affect the new position?
Yes, we just checked in with the superintendent within a couple of weeks, and they're still confident that they can move forward with this position.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And we're timing, some of the promotions or the assignments that will change with that to kind of coincide with the school year so that we don't kind of start charging them or overburden them before we get to the school year. So we're trying to work with them. Parks and Recreation. This one is a number of different budgets. It starts on page 25, and we split it into parks, recreation. We started a program a couple of years ago where the Parks Department, because during the summer they mow a lot of grass and do a lot of lawn and outdoor maintenance, and we have other sites throughout the city that are controlled or used by the utility department. So there's a budget on 27 for utility landscaping. So they go in and just make sure, maintain the properties that we own and try to stay on top of those. And then we want to keep a separate account of the pool and other things that we do, the community center, the Hearth and Rider Center. So all of those budgets are kind of individual. The main things I wanted to highlight out of these is on page 102, and this is the first example where we're going into what we call the reserve fund. So a couple of years ago, last year I guess, the Parks Department had been working on a skate park project, and there was some grant funds from the state. And so what we did is we took what the city's match was going to be and put it into this reserve fund that then we can match these grants. Well, last year we weren't successful getting the grant, but we applied again this year, and we were able to get the first grant. There's two available, and we're hopeful we might get both, but we got the first one for sure. And so this $240,000 is the city's portion towards that grant. Then if we go back a couple of pages from there.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so the 230 from the prior year, that was also city money?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, one of the challenges we've been having is just working to replace funding. Mayor's led a group to do a lot of fundraising to help support this project. We had some insurance money coming back in from the loss, and so you'll see here we have $816,800 for the fiscal year that's coming. We have scheduled $582,350 to be spent in this fiscal year. We have to make down payments on all of the equipment, and then they make it for us, and then we pay for the installation after they come. So then that includes a lot of the concrete work and other things that would be done on the site. Any questions there? All right, the library. Right now, the library operations will be staying status quo. We have added part-time positions the last budget year and been able to add a lot of additional hours for library service. And we're hoping, the library's been shut down for the last little bit because of the virus changes, but we're hoping that we'll be opening up again the first part of June. We're finalizing the plans on how to do that and make sure we help people stay safe while they're utilizing the library. Court now is on page 15. So the court includes a cost for a public defender, a city prosecutor, and then we have 3 full-time staff members there, and then about a third of a position for our elected municipal judge. The part of this budget I wanted to point out is we hired a new court manager this past year, and she has been doing a lot of great work of figuring out how can we be more efficient, how can we kind of get better at doing the violation side so that we can maybe talk about in the future, which is one of the council goals, to talk about bringing A misdemeanors back to the city. For the last 5 years now, those have been going to circuit court. So if someone gets a DUI, they're cited into circuit court to take care of that process. And right now, it takes probably 3 times as long for that process to go through the process for someone to take care of an A misdemeanor. And the most common example is a DUI. So the point I wanted to bring out is that the last line there on page 18 is $300,000 for a technology software program. We're in the process of have an RFP out to a number of software companies to try to get a new software package that will help us be a lot more efficient. Now, we didn't have a good number when we started. We used this, and this was from a justice court project in Clackamas County. And so the initial responses we've had is that number should be about half that 300,000, but we didn't have a better number when we started, so that's what we have. But I just want to let you know we don't anticipate spending that full 300,000 as we move forward with that. Yes.
Okay, the court administrator position, where did that go?
Yeah, we changed the title essentially.
Okay.
We call it a court manager now.
Okay, so it's still, okay.
But it's still, you see where that is?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right.
It's up with you.
Yeah, so we really had a great opportunity to hire somebody with a lot of court experience, and it's really paying off for us at this point. Okay, yeah.
Because of the changes that are happening at the court, will that impact potential revenue as well?
Yes, it should help us improve our revenue stream.
Or-
And that would also, the A misdemeanors would increase that, but we think we can even be more efficient collecting the revenue that is already sitting there for us. So, okay, the street fund. This time there's a separate tab for that, and then it goes to page 51 is where the page is related to the street fund. Now this is another one of those funds that's very restricted on what you can spend the money on. Nearly all of the revenue comes in here are from the state highway user revenue fund, or mostly the state gas tax. And by the state constitution, those are restricted to what you can spend them on. You can only spend them on things within the right of way. You can go from you can do sidewalks, you can do streets, those types of things. So this is one of those that we have to just make sure that we stay on task. Now, we don't anticipate any major changes in our operations with the street department. And what we're going to be doing this year, we'll be implementing our capital improvement plan. But this year for the street fund, if you go to page 108, and this goes again into the reserve fund. This is the street construction account. And if you see for the proposed 2021 budget, we have 2 projects that we're specifically working on. Gear and Harper intersection, and $125,000. That'll be to continue to work on the design of the project. The construction, I don't remember the latest estimate, but it's over $1 million will be the construction costs. And then North First Place reconstruction. So in 2017, we received an earmark from the state budget, and it was earmarked to fix North First Place from from Hermiston Avenue north to Elm. And so but it's scheduled for 2024 is when we can actually spend that money. So we're just getting started now to start doing the design, and we're working with ODOT. We're hoping that ODOT might be able to might be interested in coming into a little better partnership to work on that intersection at Elm and North First Place. There's some weird geometry making turns there, and so we could really use their help, but we won't be able to solve it on our own, but hopefully they would be interested in making that investment. But like I said, we're working on design and we're saving money. So we're still collecting the state gas tax that we are allocated, and we're putting it into our savings account and building up so we can pay for the projects in the next budget year. All right, now the utility fund. It starts on page 64, and they have their own tab. Now the utility fund, different cities do a different way. We combine water and sewer into one fund. Some do a water fund, some do a sewer fund, but we've been trying to separate them and make sure that each one is still paying for itself, even though we have them together from an accounting standpoint. And just so everybody's clear that, the reason why we are so politically correct that we call it recycled water, it's sewer when it's in the lines and it's going, but once it comes out of the treatment plant, then it's recycled water. And that's a technical term. The EPA and all those people recognize that, and our plant cleans it to that level that makes it to where you can call it that. And it can be used for different types of things that another city's plant might not be able to be used for. So ours can go on to, it can be irrigated on crops that you eat, which is different than other places. So during the summertime, we put all of our effluent, all the water that comes out of the treatment plant, into a canal that goes to West Extension Irrigation District, and their members use it throughout the summer. So we're continuing to improve our maintenance activities as we've been able to put more resources towards this with the recent rate increases. We're also working on a number of projects. If you want to take a look at page 121, this is again in the reserve fund. And this is CIP RWTP projects. So capital improvement plan, recycled water treatment plant projects. And the large ones that you'll see there's a number of projects that will be kind of carrying over, crossing the fiscal year. So there's a little money to make sure that we can pay for those. But the two large ones, 7th Street sewer replacement for $610,000. Internally we call this the 7th Street bottleneck. So the city, the most land the city has available for industrial, commercial development is up here. And there's the sewer line goes all the way basically, I mean, you're crossing the city almost from one corner to the other to get to the treatment plant. But there's a few places along that line that are too small. If our recycled water superintendent gets worried during the fair every year because when EOTech gets busy and there's a lot going down the sewer line, he's worried that it's not going to handle it. We're going to have overflows. So as we continue to add more development up here, we need to have more capacity in that line. So that's why this project, we did the first phase in this budget year. This is to propose to do the second and third phase, and that'll be complete. But what we're hopeful is in the CARES Act, which was the stimulus package adopted by the federal government, there's money from the Economic Development Administration allocated to projects that can either retain or help add jobs. And so we're going to apply for this project to try to get some the federal funding to build that project. our match would be much less than the 610, probably more like it would be, well, we're expanding the project so we can get more grant money than just the basics. But basically our cost would go down to about $400,000 and we get about $1.5 million project. So we're pretty excited about that. We've been in conversations with EDA about it already, and they think it's a good project. So let's see. Then lift station number 3, we'll be doing some improvements there for $400,000. All right, now we're back to the water department. You go to 67. That's where the water budget starts. And one of the things that we did in recent years is all of the water connections got a new water meter that reduced the amount of meter reading that we're doing. And we were able to reallocate that same staff to go and do other projects. And it's a great, it wasn't saving us money, but it gets a lot more work done. It's a position and a half that we're reading all the meters throughout the city, and now we don't have that. So they're able to do other projects and work on things that make our system a little bit better all the time. So the first project that we're going to be working on, we go to 116, page 116 in the reserve fund. This is the water project from the capital improvement plan. There's 2 large projects. First, Ridgeway, and again, this is where some of our oldest water lines are. Our water superintendent sometimes calls these the Swiss cheese lines because they've found, literally, holes worn through the pipe, and the only reason they've stayed is that pipes get kind of coated with minerals as the water goes through there. That's the only reason they haven't failed, is because those minerals build up, held the pipe together. So Ridgeway will be a large project that if you live in that neighborhood, I'm sorry, it's going to interrupt traffic for probably most of the summer.
From which part of Ridgeway to which part?
You're talking West Ridgeway, I think. West Ridgeway.
Yeah, it's West Ridgeway, and I'm trying to think if it might start like at 6th or 7th, then go all the way to 11th or close to 11th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there's a lift station that's about at 6th, and I think it starts around there, or a pump station. Okay, and then the other, well number 6. So well number 6 is right up here. We have 2 tanks right by Walmart DC, kind of just across the highway here. Maybe that way a little bit better. But they, right now, there's no backup generator on that well. And so that's one of the projects from our capital improvement plan, and one of the needs that came out of our study of our water system is we need to have a little bit better backup capacity. So our tanks that we've built help with that because they don't need any pumps. They feed everything off of gravity. But this part of the city, to fill our tanks, we have to have the well running. And so putting this backup generator will make this part of the city a lot more reliable from a water standpoint. So those are the 2 large projects in the water department this coming year that we're proposing.
So with those water projects, and you're developing this area up here, more or less, so is all that wastewater going down to the recycling center? So that has the capacity of all the stuff that's going to be coming in, Amazon?
Yes.
And is that well going to be supplying the water to Amazon? Is that one of the things there?
They haven't decided for sure how they want to do their water supply. Likely, we will be talking with them about regional water system water, which is not coming out of those wells. It comes up Feedville Road from our plant out at Feedville and 207. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why the bottleneck on the sewer side is important, so we can continue to have this development. And So, yeah, on both sides, we're trying to make sure that this area is capable of handling it.
Well, the reason I was asking is because like if you're serving recycled water for that side irrigation, there'd be a possibility of serving this side over here.
Well, that's, the challenge is we have to run it through the plant to get it to that level, so it has to go all the way there. But from an Amazon standpoint, their water has a different designation, and so they can take the water that they use to cool their data centers and put it straight into an irrigation ditch. And so that's likely what will happen. Again, they haven't finalized all those plans yet, exactly how they're going to do it, but that's what will happen with their water likely, is it will get put on fields and help generate more agriculture. So. All right, Hermiston Energy Services, a budget is on page 71. And no major changes in operations. We participated in building a new substation. Trying to think if it got finished last budget year or even before that. But it's been online now. Operations are going better because we can make sure outages are much shorter and things like that. So things are going well. We will be coming to the council at some point this fall to talk about electric rates. We've been able to go a couple years without any electric rate changes, but we'll be talking about that this coming fall. Okay, regional water system is our next subject, and that's their budget's on page 75, has its own tab. In the mid-90s, the City of Hermiston and the Port of Umatilla made a partnership, and they built what we call the regional water system. And the port had a water right for Columbia River water. And there were 2 power plants at that time that wanted to come and locate here. And so, through a partnership, the regional water system was built, which has a pump station at the river, right by the loading dock that the Port of Umatilla operates. And 9 miles, almost straight south, there's a treatment plant at Feedville and 207. And so the water all goes there and then it gets distributed. We had initially, Lamb Weston, I guess, was the original owner, and then and Simplot were also partners in that initial investment in the regional system. And now Simplot is still using their water, but they've changed from wanting potable water to make whatever they, fries or whatever they were making in their plant here before, to now they just sell it. They sell that out to their farmers and utilize their water allocation from there that way. And then we have Shears Foods is the only commercial potable water. So that treatment plant has to treat water to drinking water standards, goes to Shears, and they use that in their process, making chips and different things. So now we hadn't had a new customer for a long time. When Amazon came to the area, one of the things that they were interested in is the water system. And so now both of their new sites, so the one just on the south edge of Umatilla, and then the one down on Westland Road area, both of them are taking water from the regional water system. And the one site continues to add more, and as we get into the summer, their usage of the water goes up to cool things down. And then, like I mentioned earlier, they're in partnership with the agriculture community to use their effluent water to grow crops. So that really is a good win-win solution there. Now, every fall, we sit down with all the water users and discuss rates with them. We'll have that same discussion this year. And what we're hoping is with an additional large customer, that those rates can stay more stable. They've been known to fluctuate quite a bit over time, and you know, we're trying to provide enough certainty to those businesses so that they know what their costs are, but we also have different costs that come into play, and so we work with them rather closely on that. All right, our EOTech fund. So one of the good news items that came from this current budget year, and again, that's on page 83, we've been able to pay off what we called the bridge loan, and that was the city borrowed some money to use in the construction of the facility that was paid back by donations. So different businesses and individuals made 5-year payments, and so we were able to capitalize those donations and utilize them. We're going to use a similar model with some of the donations for the Funland Park, where we're able to do that. So if you go now to page 125, the operational budget is there in the 80s, and then 125 is a capital equipment line for EOTech. We've been doing some smaller projects, making the site more useful for various events. But the EOTech Advisory Committee just has been working a lot recently on a site master plan. So then we can be a lot more strategic in how we apply for grants, and we can potentially use this money as matching or do other smaller projects that will make the site more usable and attractive to various types of events. All right. Any questions?
So,
Yeah.
you say the equipment necessary, but then you also say the viable operation. So is it equipment or operation? Or do you have?
Well,
like
this is to buy equipment
Okay, what equipment?
like tractors, that type of thing.
Okay.
You know, we upgraded the camp. We added cameras to the site which weren't here. We also upgraded the sound system so that we could communicate with a large group, you know, during the fair or whatever under an emergency. We ran into a challenge with that the last fair. So,
I've got one.
okay.
Page 84, event revenue. It's like 300,000, which is just a small drop from last year. But again, it sounds like some of our major events may be kind of on the line. What are we expecting to see for our resources?
Well, that's, you know, we built this budget before we really knew what was going on. We started before COVID-19 really hit. So this is a slight decrease because we thought maybe we'd have some impact, but we know we're going to have to adjust this because we know that, you know, we're not going to generate the same amount of revenue. So, I mean, we've been shut. This building's been shut down for the last 2 months, basically. So, and we had a lot of events scheduled. The spring is a popular time for some events here. So.
And the master plan has begun, correct?
Yeah, they're working on getting it.
Uh-huh.
We did the strategic plan, and one of those items was we need to know exactly what we want to do out here because
Right.
there were all these ideas from before, and some of them don't work anymore. And so, yeah, we're working with an architecture firm, a landscape architecture firm, to lay that out. What are the impacts? So let's say we extend this building. How many parking spaces does that mean that we have to pave? How much land does that take up? You know, there's some of that we thought, well, we just kind of plopped down some of these other things and didn't really think about the parking and some of the additional uses. But it is in process.
It is in process, okay.
Hopeful, again, COVID-19 has caused us to not be able to meet
Sure.
or be as productive.
But
I think
nonetheless, that plan has
Yeah.
begun.
it has begun, and I think I would say hopefully by midsummer, we could have something in front of the council for approval, so. All right. Now, these are really the highlights. This is something that I alluded to earlier. So like I said, we had planned this budget before COVID-19 really hit the city or hit Oregon. And so we had planned to put in a 2.75% increase for all employees. And what I'm asking is to not make an adjustment down to this budget, but what I'm committing is that we will not implement that 2.75% increase until January for all of our employees. I've had a discussion with the police association, and they've agreed to this. And my thinking on this is mostly to try that our largest general fund revenue source, as we could see, is property taxes. And so if we're going to have a negative impact on our revenues, we'll know in November for this budget year. And so what I'm proposing is that we wait until January to implement the COLA. We've talked about possibly doing a one-time payment to try to kind of make up for it. It wouldn't be nearly the dollar amount of what employees had given up, but that's our. What I'm asking is that you approve the budget with the full amount in, but knowing that that's my commitment is that we would not implement that until January. We don't know how's reopening going to go in the community. How are people going to be getting back to work at a full level? All those kinds of things. We just don't know, and we want to be cautious as we look at that. So, any questions about that? Yeah.
I missed it, I believe, but what was the original date you guys wanted to set the COLA for?
It would have been on July 1 of 2020. Yeah, and we'd move it to January of 2021. So halfway through the year.
What would be the cost savings quote?
Okay, so citywide, it's $275,000 roughly, and that's all departments. So not just general fund. It's about $66,000 in the general fund for the 6 months. No, that's the year. Sorry, that's a year. So half of that for the 6 months. Okay. All right, now I'm open for questions, and we asked that we could get questions ahead of time, and I have a few that I'll go through and answer those first, and then if you come up with any as we go along, I'd be happy to work with those. We have all the department heads out there, social distancing, so that if we need them, we can call them in one at a time. We don't have to go over our amount. So the first one is really related to a little bit related to this COLA discussion. It was, if we found that our wages are in line with competitive positions, why are we giving a 2.75% COLA when property tax only increased by 1.7%? So I think this is a little bit of a kind of a confusion of percentages. So like I said, 2.75% for a whole year is $275,000 for the whole city, and for the general fund, it's $66,000. 1.7% increase in the property tax is roughly $1 million. And so I think that's the percentage confusion is what that is there. So the next one, over the last 4 budget cycles, our general fund revenue grew by 1.36 million, and our personnel services has grown by 3 million. How is this sustainable? And we can see those numbers if you go to pages Roman numeral 16 through 18 are some of the consolidated numbers there. So if we take a look at general fund revenues, they've increased over the past 4 years from 13.7 to 15.1. And our personnel services in the general fund, we have to go to page, that's a little bit further down. So that one is in on page 5 after the first tab. And it goes from 6.9 to 10.0 or 10.1 roughly. And the biggest increase there is what we talked about earlier with the cost allocation study. It goes up $1.5 million in this from budget 1920 to budget 2021, and so that I think it just puts a different. It makes it look odd, but from our standpoint, we feel like we are keeping our revenues and expenses in the general fund at a sustainable pace. If PERS continues to bother us, that's going to be an issue. Mr. Kay, did you have anything else to add?
I was going to add, if you look on page 4, under general fund resources, you will see transfers from energy service, utility fund, street fund, and regional water. These are the allocations that go to those enterprise funds. That payroll increase is largely a lot of that. So they're being hit with that charge, and if you went and looked at energy services or utility fund or street fund back here in the tabs, you would see a transfer to the general fund of a certain dollar amount that's defensible based on their activities with the city council, with their activities of full-time equivalents, and their total operating budget. Those factors all play into how we determine these dollar amounts that they would have to pay to the general fund. It's no longer bodies that's covering it. We've moved the bodies to the general fund. Now we're hitting them with the overhead cost allocation for those bodies. So that's why a big number, about almost $1 million, the 900 and something thousand, is that increase. I just wanted to have you see, you could see it coming into the general fund on those transfers on page 4.
And then the next question, can you explain our decreased cash forward position over the course of the last 4 years? Is that money represented elsewhere in the budget, or are we spending down reserves to keep people employed? So let's look on page 18 of the Roman numeral 18. If you look, let's see. Cash forward is it's the last line under revenues before the total. And 17-18 is at 23 million, and 2021 is 12.8 million. It looks bad from that standpoint. But a cash forward, this is like a picture in time. So in 17-18, we would have had some money for projects, large projects. That was the year we were finishing or working on the wastewater treatment plant. I think that was toward the end of that. Maybe that was before, and then we were working on EOTech, we were working on other projects, and so at that point we had a lot of cash, but we had those for projects. And then if we looked at the general fund cash forward in specific, the council has made 2 strategic investments, is what I'll call it, that has spent down our general fund reserves, and that one was for EOTech. The council dedicated some funds here, and then the other was to expand the Harkenreiter Center and add a basement underneath. Again, those 2 together were about $1.5 million of some of those cash forward numbers. So that's the answer there. The next one is the $2 million increase in revenue from other agencies. Is that our enterprise zone funds? And if you look at, that's on the same page, you see from other agencies is about the 5th line down, and last budget year is $2.5 million, this budget year it's $4.5 million, and that is those $2 million from the enterprise zone. So it's $1 million that is technically the city's, and it's $1 million that the county has committed to the water tower project. And so both of those are there. And then the last one, in the EOTech budget, did we identify increased marketing dollars and/or a marketing manager position? So I showed you page, no, I didn't. Let's go to 124, is in the reserve fund. This is, there's $100,000 in this account. We're working with Venue Works. They are working to get some money out of their budget to put towards the marketing position, and then we will contribute to make that work and that happen. We actually had done an interview with somebody before all this COVID-19 stuff happened, and then that search has kind of fallen apart, but we'll be back on that hopefully as we continue to hopefully move through these phases of reopening where we can get a little bit better access to things. So those are the questions that we had submitted beforehand. Is there any questions here tonight?
Question I would ask Byron, on your proposal earlier, you had indicated holding the COLA until you had an assessment of property taxes that were paid. How are you going to trigger that? What does that mean? I mean, how would you pull the trigger to back pay it or pay it? And I mean, we're not.
Well, we would. One thing that I've been clear is that we would not look to make it retroactive. So it would only be starting January 1. And you know, I don't know. I mean, we report to the council monthly, and we would be talking to the council about, you know, what property tax revenues are looking like, and if that November collection doesn't come in as, you know, as strong, and I can't put a solid number on that, but if we're worried about it, we'll go back to the employees and talk about it again.
But now you said that, okay, you just said that it's not retroactive.
Right.
Okay, but you said some kind of bonus or incentive or
Yeah, potentially we
how
would
would that work?
We would look at some kind of a flat dollar amount, $500-600, that, again, after November, after we know what the revenues would look like, and then start the COLA in January.
But doesn't it kind of, okay, you're saying it's not retroactive, so you can't do it before January?
Well, we wouldn't.
It's a different monies, I understand.
I mean, it's calling it something different,
Right.
I don't know. It's
Okay.
not a COLA, it would, because it wouldn't be equal to what somebody would have lost in wages
Right.
over that time.
Okay.
So. Lori?
Is it one or the other COLA? Is it one payment COLA, or is it one-time bonus money? Is it one or the other, or both?
We've talked about potentially both.
Okay, okay.
How many employees would this affect again?
We have just under 100, like 94, 93 full-time staff. And we have some permanent part-time staff in that would affect as well.
Of those, which one of those are, I guess at this point, are deemed essential?
Well, under the federal designation, all of our utility staff and the police department would be essential staff. That's under the COVID requirements.
Yeah.
You did say that you were in touch with the police association and they were okay with this?
Yes.
So what,
Oh, go ahead.
why do you think property taxes aren't gonna be what they are? I mean,
I'm just trying to be extra cautious.
Right.
I think they're gonna be pretty solid this year. That's my kind of gut.
well, I was wondering, I mean,
I think
was there some kind of, you know, like, I don't know, like a get out of jail free that was part of the stimulus package for residents, you know, like skipping mortgage, or is there a skip tax payment or something like that? Or?
No, I guess what I'm most worried about is if this lasts too long and people can't make their mortgage, that's where most of them pay their property taxes, is through their mortgage payment. And so if that were to happen for a wide group, that would give us concern. And same with business, you know, if somebody stayed out of business for a while, you know, they're gonna have a hard time making their tax payments.
You know, fortunately, we live in an environment or a region or a community that hasn't been as impacted because of our broad spectrum diversification of employment in the region. In our last recession that we went through, it did impact us as strongly as areas like Bend or Portland. I think that'll happen again here regionally, but you still, I appreciate the city manager's willingness to consider this. You still have huge unemployment rates. You still have businesses that have been closed for 2 months. Some of those won't return. They won't pay their property taxes. And I do worry about people making rent and mortgage payments. And so I respect the issue that you're willing to, and the employees, you've communicated with the employees and they're willing to hold off as well. I think that's respectful of our community and the tragedies that they're going through right now too. That we shouldn't be looking to give wages of pay raises to all these people that are now sitting out there unemployed and businesses that have been shuttered. And so I think that's also just respectful too. So I appreciate your willingness to look at that and also the employees for letting us reconsider that offer.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, you know, the police association, you know, was probably the toughest discussion, but we came to an agreement how this could work. And but I've had feedback after we, you know, talked to the employees about it that, you know, they recognize that their neighbors are out of work or, you know, their friends are having troubles, and so they didn't want to, you know, get a pay raise and have everybody, you know, else doing really badly. They wanted to kind of help in a small way. Mr. Kay?
One thing I would say about COVID and the stuff going across the country, this is the only time I will admit I'm glad Oregon does not have sales tax. You're seeing numerous cities across the country are talking about $200, $300, $400 million deficits of mid-sized cities. It's because sales tax revenue is going through the floor. We depend primarily on property taxes. Just scuttlebutt discussions that Byron and Assistant City Manager Morgan and I have had, we think probably 60 to 80% of people in our area pay their property taxes through escrow accounts with their mortgage payment. And if they're able to keep those payments up, I don't see a big issue. We may have a fall down of prior years. It's the concern I have, as the mayor said, if they're unable to make payments, their escrow agent's going to pay what they can on the property tax from what they've already put in their escrow account. We may not get it all. If that's a substantial amount of what we anticipate we would receive absent COVID, we will have to revisit what we can do to deal with that shortfall. But not having sales tax revenue and not depending on that right now helps us, because we don't depend on a sales tax revenue, which is very volatile. So we kind of have a blessing in disguise, if you will, in that regard. That's why I don't think we will see a significant, we're going to have an impact on our revenue stream, but in the fall, November and December, I think that's what will tell the tale. And knock on wood, it won't be too severe.
Right. And that's, you know, to kind of go a little bit off of the mayor's comments, yesterday the legislature received their revenue report. I forget what they call it exactly, but basically an economic update forecast. And you know, our region of the state is showing those economists are saying we will have the least impact. We won't rebound as fast as the others either, but we will have the least impact to start with. So, you know, I think the economists are kind of confirming some of our thoughts of how we want to approach this. Okay. Mr. Chair, I think.
I'm sorry, I got one more question.
You got one.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I've got one more question. Did we make an adjustment in the TPA in consideration?
Yes,
of this?
we have lowered both TPA and our TRT estimates.
Maybe you can explain that for everybody that's here.
Yeah, okay, so transient room tax is charged on hotel rooms, and we have another additional fee called a tourism promotion assessment. And those both, again, it's a fee on hotel rooms. And so based on the fact that we know travel went way down for a couple of months, we have dialed back those forecasts of how much revenue we think we'll get from that, those two sources.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
So, I know we were, number 3 on the agenda. Have we reviewed the budget document? Is that also what was in play here?
Right,
Okay.
yes.
Before I open it up, I just want to say thank you, Byron. There's a lot of numbers here, and for those of us who don't deal with them every day, you know, we can look at it and get kind of an idea. But I like the way you put this in a way that we can all kind of understand it and help walk us through that, so I really appreciate that.
Now, thanks, and if you have, after the fact, if you have something that you'd like me to try to do in the future, I'd be open to hearing those kind of things, so I can highlight different parts or whatever.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I think we move to adopt the budget, is that correct? Do I have a motion for that?
Hold on, do we need to check on the phone? Lily, is anybody?
Yeah, listed.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm gonna give you this, Josh. So you can-
And then number 6 says approve the tax levy. We have to do this.
Yeah,
Is that for approval?
yeah, that would be approval of the proposed.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the 2021 proposed budget?
I move.
You're, if I could interrupt,
Yep.
you're a little early. You have a tax levy
Yeah,
that we would want to have you approve first, because we have to have the approval of this committee.
Well, he's got the agenda gives the proposed budget first, and then the tax levy second.
Well, the actual approval's on the budget requested on number 7.
Number 7.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
approve the general fund operations.
Because the tax levy
Okay.
funds are part of the revenue sources, so you have to approve that first,
Thank you for pointing
then
that
we
out.
can approve the total budget. I hate to be a stickler for process,
No,
but
I'm glad you are.
you can't do one before you do the
I
other.
was reading the agenda incorrectly, so I
That's
appreciate it.
okay.
Thank you.
I just,
Can I have a request? Can you explain the tax levy to those who might not be familiar with it?
Right, so,
Please.
so property tax, there's kind of two parts of the formula. You have the base, that's the assessed value. So we talked about in the city of Hermiston, it went over $1 billion. And then you have the rate. And the rate right now is $6.08, and it's been that way for 20 some odd years, I think, now. Whenever Measure, I forget which one, Measure 5 or Measure 50 froze it. And so, from a city standpoint, we have to live within that rate. And so, we don't have any flexibility to change it. We could go down, I guess. We could go lower, but that's the cap we can go to, so.
So if I'm reading this correctly, we actually need 2 motions, is that correct? We need to move to approve the general fund operation at 6.0860 rate for 1,000. So do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay, moved and second.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that carries. And then the bonded debt of $315,800. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Moved. Do I have a second?
second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And now item number 7. Do I have a motion to approve the budget as presented?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion and a second?
You have to have, because of the COLA, does there need to be any kind of a,
No, I mean, I guess I'm just committing that I would do that and that we would approve it at these levels.
okay,
So,
okay,
then we wouldn't have to come back and ask the council to go up if we wanted to cut half.
okay.
All right, I heard a motion, I believe. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that carries. And item 8 is we're adjourned on that.
thank you.
So now let me bring the mic back down to the we can start our next meeting.
How's everybody doing? They need a break?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, we're gonna take a break just briefly, let everybody go to the restroom, get some cookies, dessert, whatever, and we'll restart this back up in 5 minutes.
Hanging in there. Yeah. I'm in security. Anything anybody, I support all housing units and the staff. Supplies, everything.
It's just me, nobody. I worry about those cat-like reflexes you have. Just once on this road. This goes 115.
It's a long day, hot day.
Everybody back? Doug Smith, can I get you to get a seat, please? Thank you. All right, everybody's back, I think. If you guys weren't aware, you are also members of the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee as well. So we're opening that meeting, and in this meeting, we also have to elect a chair. So I would entertain a motion.
I would recommend we retain both from the last meeting into the same positions.
Second.
Got to do one at a time.
All right, so yes, we do have to recommend one at a time. So chairperson, you're recommending Mr. Roberts, okay? That was Mr. Primer and seconded by Mrs. Linton. Any other nominations? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And Mr. Chair, we no longer have a microphone, so it's up to you.
All right. So I would entertain a motion for a secretary.
I'd like to nominate Jessica Marin.
All right. Ms. Myers. Second. Seconded by Mr. Gutierrez. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency budget presentation. Take it away.
And that's up for me. Can everybody hear me without a mic?
Yep.
Okay. I project pretty well. So if you're aware, the Urban Renewal Agency is a separate taxing entity that's focused on downtown development and redevelopment, and takes property taxes that are collected within the district boundaries and funnels them into projects only within the urban renewal district itself. The boundaries for that district are roughly the city's C1 Central Commercial Zone, starting at Highland Avenue, going north to Ridgeway. Those would be the north and south boundaries, and then about 6th Street to the west and 7th Street to the east. So if you think of that area of Hermiston Central Core, that's the urban renewal district area. And it operates on a frozen tax base from when we formed it in 2013. And any increase in value of properties that are in that district, all of the property tax from that increase funnels in to the district, and then it's spent on projects. So basically, this is a very short budget, and we'll be here just for a few minutes while we go through the 17-page document. The budget itself starts on page 10, and the proposed budget for the district this year is $602,725. Now, we're starting the year with approximately $372,000 in cash on hand, and we're estimating tax revenues for the year of $205,425. I went ahead and I looked up just from the planning documents when we formed the district back in 2012, and our property tax revenues are running about 3 years ahead of where we projected. So the district is bringing in more revenues than we initially anticipated. The forecast revenue when we were planning this back in 2012 for this year would have been $159,000 in 2007, but we're anticipating bringing in $205,000. So we're operating pretty well ahead of schedule, and the district's proving to be pretty successful. Moving on to the individual projects within the district that we proposed for this year, on page 11 you have facade grants. If you're aware of the facade grant program, it is helping existing businesses or new construction of businesses within the district construct a more attractive exterior appearance. And businesses, when they do a remodel or a building, they're eligible for up to $10,000 in grant money. This year, we're proposing $50,000 of grants in the budget. You'll look and see that this is actually a decrease from $90,000 last year, but that $90,000 included outstanding loans or grants that hadn't been paid out yet. We had $40,000 of people who were in the process of remodeling. They've all completed, so we have no outstanding grants this year. So we're proposing to return to the standard $50,000. It's possible that with the economic slowdown, we may see reduced grant requests. We're already getting interest in grants. I know of a couple of properties who are looking, but I'm not going to promise that we will go through all $50,000. Moving on to the next page, we have the Festival Street. That is the public gathering space that's on Northeast 2nd Street next to the Hermiston City Hall. It's complete. We spent about $1 million building that. And for the remainder of the district's life, we're allocating $3,000 a year that goes towards programming. That helps for paying entertainers, buying materials for festivals, things like that. And so it's basically an administrative overhead. On page 13, we have the wayfinding sign program. The proposed budget for this is $48,500. The wayfinding sign program, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, one of the goals of the Urban Renewal District is to make people who are new to town or are trying to take advantage of the downtown businesses, make them aware of where our public parking is. We have 6 municipal parking lots that are available for free parking off-street. We have various public attractions, the library, community center, things like that, and we're trying to make it so that we can have highway signage and pedestrian-oriented signage to direct people towards destinations. This one has grown a little bit. We actually wound up partnering with the city as opposed to just being a strictly urban renewal project to develop a citywide wayfinding program. And so what we're proposing, the plan itself is almost done. It will be done in this fiscal year. And we have of the original 83,000 in the plan, we still have the 48,000 unexpended that we can spend on physical sign development this year. We're proposing to start with directing to the parking lots, because those are by far what was identified as the downtown's biggest impediment, was that perception that there isn't adequate parking, and that everybody just sees the street parking and says, oh, that's full, but there's well over 200 parking spaces that are available just behind the buildings. So we're trying to help direct people to those. The next page is 14, where we have parking improvements. This is one of the original planned items, and we're proposing to actually go ahead and fund this, which was to rebuild and beautify the municipal parking lots that are fronting on Gladys and on Hurlburt Avenue. I call them the Banner Bank parking lot and the Hales parking lot, but everybody has a different name for them.
Technically, they don't belong to those businesses.
Yeah, they don't belong to those businesses, they are owned by the city. And we have we're starting as I mentioned, we're starting the year with 350,000 of cash on hand, and we're proposing to take that money down and invest all 300,000 into doing parking improvements. We've done preliminary studies, and we can either resurface 2 parking lots, just do an overlay. We can do a complete rebuild of at least one, where we completely excavate it out, build it to a street standard, beautify it, relocate the curb cuts, rebuild the sidewalks, and overall increase the efficiency, which will result in a net increase of about 12 parking places in the municipal lots. And that can be done with the $300,000 in cash on hand that we have. And then we have $109,000 set aside for debt service on page 15. That's repaying the initial loan that we did for bonded debt for building the Festival Street. The only other items that are in the budget are, we have $5,000 that we set aside for landscape improvements. We kind of keep that as a placeholder in case something like a sidewalk needs repairing or something. That's been used in the past for that. And then we have $65,000 in the new fund called the contingency fund. We used to call that reserve for future expenditures, and this year we're calling it contingency, so that should a project of opportunity arise and an opportunity to partner with private business or something, we'll have that money available. That actually concludes the entire budget. As I said, it was pretty short, but we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just so the group's aware, I know that you recently were going through like a survey on the wayfinding sign, is that right?
Yes.
Is that finished?
It ends tomorrow.
Okay, so if you haven't participated, please go online, fill out the survey. Gives a lot of good information about what that looks like. You guys have done a really good job. But I'm excited to see these. These are gonna look really nice, and so I think it'll help kind of dress up and identify the community. And so if you haven't participated in that, please go on there and look at that, and I'm excited to see that implemented. The second question I had to do with the parking lot improvements. Did you identify the parking lot across from the library as a potential improvement?
The one on the south side of Gladys?
Correct. So
No,
that
we are,
part of the city hall project, potentially. Is that not included in this?
we are trying to come up with or maximize the usage of our funds for public benefit, and because that parking lot will wind up providing a lot of parking for City Hall, I felt like it was more appropriate to do it where it would benefit the business community more.
There's still a lot of people that park in there for business.
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the main wayfinding things that we want people to be aware of while we're talking about parking lots is the new parking lot behind the library. That has over 80 parking spaces in it and is walking distance to downtown, and literally no one knows about it, and it's so new that it doesn't show up on aerial maps, so when you look at Google Maps or something, it still looks like dirt. So
There's a lot of seniors that know about it,
that's a good point.
because when they're serving lunches, it gets full.
It does get full during that.
When Harkin Riders open for lunches, which it's not right now.
Whose property is that between the railroad tracks and 395, you know, right by Nookies?
That is all leased area. It's actually owned by the railroad. The railroad owns 100 feet off of each side of the center line of the tracks. And then they lease it out. I believe everything between Main, or between Orchard and Hermiston Avenue is leased by Mitch Myers right now.
Are you talking parking lot?
Yeah, just the parking lot.
That's
Just
okay.
the big.
So the one right off of 395 there
Yeah.
across from the,
Oh,
yeah, that's
that-
ours. That is the city parking lot as well.
Okay.
I don't see that very well utilized either.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right, open it up for comments.
Number 6.
And I would ask for a motion to approve the budget as presented.
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Primer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. And any other business, or we? All right, we're adjourned.
I'd like to thank the chair and the treasurer for their hard work tonight. And secretary. I'd also like to thank the business department. I know Mark and Barb put a lot of work into this budget proposal. And thank City Manager Smith and Mr. Spencer for their hard work and their presentations tonight. I thought they were really well done. The budget message was really easier and easier to understand every year, and I appreciate the hard work that they put into it to make sure it's something digestible to us novices so that we understand it better, because it can get pretty complicated. So I appreciate them as well, and I thank all of you for participating in the process.